Compass Mining is your trusted partner in Bitcoin mining. Whether you're investing in one machine or thousands, our customizable solutions are tailored to meet your needs. We are your experts in Bitcoin mining, offering a platform where individuals and businesses can purchase hardware, host machines, and access a range of ancillary Bitcoin mining services. We also specialize in large-scale site development and data center operations. Discover more at compassmining.io and see how we can power your success today. Okay, miners, that's right. The first trading day of 2025, and what a doozy it is. Green across the board for Bitcoin and the Bitcoin mining stocks we cover on the channel. That's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. The general theme of 2025 being the year of the Bitcoin mining stocks. We've got a number of visuals, stats, charts we want to talk about in today's presentation, plus a production update from Bitfarms and some news from Hive. So much to talk about. Before we get into it, take a second, smash the like button. Big help to myself and the channel. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join and let us know in the comment section below how you're feeling about the Bitcoin mining stocks right now, if you're making any purchases in the last few trading days, and your outlook for 2025. Now, with that being said, let's get into today's video. Okay, guys, so that's right. Thursday morning, the first trading day of 2025. Anthony, we were expecting Q1 to be a blockbuster quarter for the miners, and they're delivering in a big way on the very first day of trading. Green across the board in the Bitcoin mining sector, and Bitcoin itself just broke through $97,000 US once again.
Yeah, no, good day for Bitcoin and a good day for most of the mining companies as well. It's been a volatile day. We've seen a bit of up and down today, but like you say, Bitcoin back through the 97 barrier. Maybe some movement post the end of the year where people get their taxes sorted out and start selling a few shares. Maybe some repurchasing today, because believe you me, some of those mining stocks look quite good value at the moment. In terms of where the Bitcoin price is, irrespective of how good they are operation, I mean, the Bitcoin price at the moment, all those miners will be making money.
That's a great point. Yeah, $97,000, regardless of how efficient your machines, you're in the profit there. Now, you bring up the fact a lot of people may be starting to open some positions for the new year. We talked about the impacts of tax loss selling leading into the final weeks of December. You and I joined the group, Anthony. We made some big purchases in each one of our own personal account here to kick off the new year now that we've got the new contribution room. Both of those are posted in our Patreon if you guys are curious what we're buying. Obviously, our big Miner Madness 2.0 competition coming up in a week's time, so we're getting ready for that one. Now, Anthony, you talk about Bitcoin price surging back through $97,000. We've got a number of positive catalysts in the sector that we had talked about going into Q1 here. First and foremost is the incoming Trump administration now in about 18 days' time. So this is a huge catalyst for the entire sector. How are you feeling about the administration shift that we're about to witness in the United States?
I think anyone that's witnessed what's happened the last 6 months in terms of Nashville, the election, can only foresee very positive things happening really in terms of Bitcoin price. And, we saw the rally post the election, even just from the election dates to reaching 108,000, went up, nearly $40,000 just since the election day itself. It's a positive story. And that's what we wanted with the Democrats. There was too much, in-house fighting over at Bitcoin. There was no one prepared to make any stance on it, but the Republicans, and Trump's obviously led that with a number of some of the senior senators, and I've got this thing really worked out now going into 2025, and hopefully, maybe the Street Reserve doesn't happen in 2025, maybe it does, hopefully it does, but if it looks like we're going to go down that route, I'm sure.
It most definitely does. Now, interestingly enough, last week we put out a video talking about max pain for the miners, talking about the bottom for the Bitcoin miners. We didn't time it exactly. The following day, they did retreat another % or two, but it does look like optimism has returned to the sector. We're going to come on to the share price update here in a second, but One comment you made there, Anthony, about this strategic reserve, we've talked about this extensively on the channel. The initial proposal was for 200,000 coins per year over a 5-year period for 1 million coins. That would give them essentially 5% of the Bitcoin network, which is roughly on par with the 5% of global gold reserves that the US holds. Now, since then, we've had the $100,000 sailor party. I've started following a lot of new accounts on social media, and many of them have started talking about this 500,000 Bitcoin purchase. Now, Anthony Scaramucci may be one of the most reputable accounts, saying the US, I'm not sure where this information came from, is looking to buy 500,000 Bitcoin potentially in 2025. Now, we've talked a lot about the game theory here, Anthony. We've seen Russia, China open up restriction towards Bitcoin. A number of the smaller countries now around the world are adopting the Bitcoin standard following El Salvador's very successful launch. Do you think we could get an unexpected surprise here from this administration or this potential global game theory?
Well, there's 200,000 confiscated, so there's a head start there. To get to 500,000, that's another purchase of 300,000. I mean, the thing is, it's dependent on when the US wants to buy it. I mean, at the moment, Bitcoin price is 97,000. At the end of the 2025, it might be considerably higher. So, maybe they can work on getting it sooner rather than later and save themselves a little bit of money. But there's a couple of issues. I mean, one is the availability to purchase that amount of Bitcoin. What's left on the exchange at the moment doesn't mean that that Bitcoin's available. There'll be many people out there that haven't self-custodized their Bitcoin, and it's on an exchange, and they're not prepared to sell it. Some of my Bitcoin's on an exchange. I'm not going to sell it, so they'll have to go for somebody else's Bitcoin. So, if you see the numbers of there's still 2 million Bitcoin on exchanges, it doesn't mean it's available for purchase. It just means it's held there because people haven't self-custodied it. So that's one thing. And then obviously the sheer purchasing of that, we've seen the ETFs, so it won't be just the US government buying Bitcoin, it'll be everyone trying to buy Bitcoin. So, you've got a real supply and demand issue. And that leads to, where do we think the price is going to be at the end of 2025? Now, we don't, normally give prices out on this channel, but we like to focus on what other people do. And interestingly today, H.C. Wainwright came out with their expectations of the Bitcoin price. Now, H.C. Wainwright are linked to most of the big North American Bitcoin miners. They do a lot of work on their behalf in terms of some of the ATMs that are in play and a lot of other advice and capital raising for some of these mining companies. Their expectation at the moment is that Bitcoin could get to 225,000 at the end of the year. That's an increase from what they previously said. So 225,000, that means it's going to more than double from where it is today. So if you're going to think of buying another 300 or 500,000 Bitcoin, you want to make sure you get in there fairly early. And as soon as large chunks of it are purchased, the price will start to rally as we've seen this year with the sheer volume of the ETFs. I mean, you talk about the US government having 5%. Well, if you look at the ETFs and MicroStrategy, that's more than 5% of Bitcoin this year effectively been purchased. So I don't know how many more 5% are left for everybody else to go and get their hands on. But it's going to be interesting. I mean, it just we said before, it's just one positive news story after another. So hopefully, we'll get our expectations in play, and Bitcoin price rallies and the mining stocks rally on behind that, because end of the day, the market can, not focus on the mining companies, but at some point in time when they start delivering earnings and the Bitcoin price is in 6 figures and they're delivering earnings there, they've got efficient fleets and therefore great margins and therefore great profits. The market will have to pay attention at some point in time, just not getting the same sort of respect at the moment that maybe other stock indices are having.
Yeah, you bring up some great observations there, Anthony. Another quote from Michael Saylor I really like: the first country to print their money to buy Bitcoin wins. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen. As soon as one of these large G7 countries goes out with a notable, sizable purchase, it's going to be game over and everybody rushing into those exchanges to purchase or gobble up any available Bitcoin. You mentioned the available balance, Anthony. You're right. It's in the 2.21 million Bitcoin range. That's down from 2.25 million. We've had a number of comments recently saying, where is all this Bitcoin coming from? It takes a lot of money and time to impact a 2 million Bitcoin reserve, you guys, regardless of how many ETFs are buying. That is a substantial amount of Bitcoin and money to be gobbled up. One other observation in the Wainwright article, Anthony, that I saw, talking about 2025 being the year of the miners, the general theme of our video and our consensus on the channel as well. They're estimating the market cap of these large miners to exceed $100 billion in 2025. Now, depending where you source this, if you include HPC AI, whatever, we're looking at around $34 billion market cap cumulative in the mining space. So that tells you about a 3x. We've seen the target for Bitcoin essentially a double, miners essentially a triple. So there's that leverage miner play we talk about on the channel. HC Wainwright wasn't the only company coming out with revised expectations. VanEck themselves, so Jan VanEck, who's going to be speaking at the Bitcoin Conference Week in New York, the one we just secured there last week, Anthony, he's come out saying their firm is seeing potentially as high as $450,000 per Bitcoin, representing about half of the global value of gold. Interestingly enough, when we talked to Adam Back, the inventor of Hashcash in Amsterdam, he told us a very similar thesis. He feels like Bitcoin is obviously more valuable, better store of value than gold. He sees no reason why gold shouldn't flow into Bitcoin in terms of funds, and that will eventually bring the price of gold down, somewhere meeting in the middle.
Yeah, no, we're getting these sort of stories on a daily basis now, and it's all positive news. I'm still waiting for someone to tell me it's all a mistake, and I've been dreaming all the way through this because at the moment, 2024 was a great year. 2025 looks like a great year as well. And this is 2025 now. We're in the sort of like previous cycles. We're into a bull cycle at the moment, and with the expectation of what we've been talking about for the last 10 minutes, do we feel like there's going to be a bear cycle going forward? Possibly not in this instance. I mean, we haven't had the level of buying in previous cycles that we've seen the ETFs go at this year. So, or last year as we are now, we're in 2025 now. So in 2024, and those ETFs were approved back on the 10th of January. It's just been one way in terms of where the purchasing has been going, and that's inflows. With a few outflows, not saying every day's been inflows, but the vast majority of days over that whole period, the last 12 months has been inflows into those ETFs. And you've got the likes now of the BlackRock ETF, which is the largest ETF. That's got close to half a million Bitcoin in that particular fund itself. And then you've got MicroStrategy, getting close to 500,000 themselves. So those two together, well over 1 million Bitcoin held. It's just been relentless.
Yeah, it really has. And although those stats are astonishing, Anthony, you can see they've been buying Bitcoin now, the ETFs for a year, MicroStrategy for multi-years, and combined, they're hardly at that million. So on the one hand, it is a sizable reserve, most definitely. On the other hand, you can see how long and how much money it takes to chew through that excess air in the system, so to speak. So with that being said, Anthony, it's pretty clear 2025 is the year of Bitcoin, or at least based on a lot of these analyst expectations. We feel like this is also going to be the year of the miner. So I wanted to switch over to the mid-morning miner update. You and I were making some purchases today, as I said in the intro there. Another thing I wanted to highlight, I threw this on my Twitter account, my top trade of 2024. So TeraWulf, I was actually able to pick up at 91 cents. I think you got in slightly below me, Anthony.
48 US cents was my
48
purchase.
US. Okay, so
US
even better. Now, obviously, we've been in TeraWulf quite some time. I actually exited most of my position here on the recent rally up in the $8 range. I wanted to highlight this because if we look at the mid-morning market update today, TeraWulf just came out with their 70 megawatt HPC announcement. They've sold off considerably since then. They're actually only miner in the red today in the $5 range now, or mid fives. So this is a perfect example, you guys, of how a few weeks' time can substantially impact your return in the mining space. So we talk about being selective, Anthony, taking profits, obviously managing your portfolio actively when you see opportunities, whether they're buys like today or sells like I'm highlighting here, can make a substantial impact on those percentage returns.
Yes, I mean, and in fairness to TeraWulf, they've had a great last sort of 18 months has been really good. I mean, they've gained momentum as a stock. I want to say a favourite. You know, the Wolf pack has got momentum. Certainly, we had the Mara pigs, and the Wolf pack came into the space, and they had real momentum the last 18 months. We've had Paul on the podcast many times. We've had Nazar. We've had Patrick Fleury, the CFO, some great people on the podcast there, and always well received. Videos are always well received on there. And they've just signed this contract now with Core 42, and it's a good contract. It's not as big as the Core Scientific contract, but it's a great contract to access at that level there. And that's close to 100 million of revenues, probably close to maybe 60, 70 million of net profits if you compare it with a Core Scientific deal. So certainly one to watch. But the market cap today is at 2 billion. We want to see more from TeraWulf in terms of, if they're going to allocate more megawatts in the future. This is obviously a starting point. And a great starting point when you consider how many of the miners are now in this sort of what we now call the hybrid space. So you've got the pure play miners like Bitfarms, Marathon, Riot, and CleanSpark, those that haven't really focused too much in our endeavors on HPC. Yes, they're talking about it, but we've not seen anything material. But the rest of the miners have been fully focused on doing something in the HPC space, and quite a few have done. TeraWulf have talked about it for a while, and they managed to get that announcement out just before the end of the year. So they met that criteria that they'd been talking about for a number of months. So it didn't come as a total shock to anyone like that. And it stacks up as a good contract. But yeah, the price today in the red, and I don't know why, because that article from HC Wainwright, is very positive to all the mining stocks. So, the 100 billion, and like you say, if the mining stocks added together at the moment are around about that 30 to 40 billion, there's plenty of movement there to do a 3x from where they are now, which will put, TeraWulf in that sort of 6 billion, 6.5 billion brackets. Bit of a head scratcher at that one there, but that's where the markets are. You do your research, you take your time. It's about timing sometimes in these markets because we do scratch our heads looking at the share prices sometimes where we think we see value and the market is not really focused on that there. So but this year, if the Bitcoin price stays where it is at the moment and keeps going, we'll see some sort of like improvement in mining stocks because, as I say, it's profitable now. I just want to make one last point on the mining stocks before we move on, and that's if you think about the results for Q4 or this last 3 months of 2024, and let's just say look at say Riot, because Riot have got they at the end of the year they have just 11,000 Bitcoin. That 11,000 Bitcoin is going to be valued at $30,000 more per Bitcoin in the last quarter than it was the previous quarter. So with the FASB rules, the valuation, they're going to have in the region of, an extra $330 million added to their net income statement for the last quarter of 2024. And if they're doing that, just think what Marathon Digital are going to have on their income statement, and they've got over 40,000 Bitcoin. Now, not all that Bitcoin was achieved in the last quarter. They purchased Bitcoin at a higher price, so some of that value will already be in there. But they had over 20,000 Bitcoin. So again, you could see 500 million, 600 million added to their net income. So, we look back at the last quarter, only one miner was green. That was Hut 8. They came in with $900,000 of net income for the quarter. That was the only miner green. And I've just mentioned two miners that are going to have probably between 300 and 600 million, irrespective of what else they do with, in terms of their costs and revenues. Just the FASB rules are going to really show them. So Hut 8 will be another one that really benefits from this. CleanSpark, Hive, DMG, all these mining companies. You can see Hive moving to the US before the end of quarter one in 2025, so they can do their next accounting under the GAT rules. They'll be also party to this as well. And if we think that the Bitcoin price is going to run through 2025, just think of the impacts of those hodls during that period there. And basically, if you just look at, everyone that's got Bitcoin in their wallets or on an exchange somewhere, look at the value that Bitcoin's achieved over the last year. And it's the same principle. Your valuation is there. I've got some Bitcoin and it's done really well over the last couple of years, actually. I mean, I've had some for about 4 years. So I've seen it go up and down a little bit, but the last 2 years has been really positive. And so these mining companies now are going to really benefit this last quarter. If 2025 is half as good as HC Wainwright say it's going to be, and we finish at 155, 160,000 Bitcoin, it's going to be a great year for the miners.
Compass Mining makes Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone. Start mining in as little as 48 hours with our turnkey hardware, online and mining directly to your Bitcoin wallet within 2 business days. Find out more at compassmining.io and get started now.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's funny, all the animal analogies. We had the Mara pigs, then we had the wolf pack. I would say Q4 was the seal, the quarter of the seal miner, or the seal team, or whatever we want to call them. But you're right. HC Wainwright points out the pure play miners. Just these FASB accounting rules on the hodls, Anthony, are going to be mind-blowing numbers. And there's a lot of people that have screeners on their stock accounts. They don't even look at companies that have negative net earnings. So once these companies come out, not only with positive earnings, but the comps, quarter over quarter comps between Q3 to Q4 are going to look just absolutely blockbuster. And you bring up a really good point. We are not in a linear sector here, you guys. A lot of people say, oh, Q4, the miners lagged. We're waiting for the exponential pop here. This is not going to be a linear progression. If and when the US government starts buying tens or hundreds of thousands of coins, if and when these companies start putting out hundreds of millions of dollars of positive net income, this is going to turn heads, and it's going to turn heads fast. It does not take a lot of money in a 32 billion market cap industry to get these valuations moving in a big way, you guys. Think about some of the blue chip companies, their $1 trillion valuation in a single company, and we have an entire sector that's supporting the Bitcoin network and essential to the Bitcoin ecosystem that's valued at 34 billion. This can move very quickly. You want to make sure you have your lures or your hooks in the water, to use a fishing analogy, so to speak. Now, moving on to some of the other miners here, Anthony. Green across the board. You mentioned some of the smaller miners, Hive, Gryphon. We've opened up Miner Madness 2.0. We've seen a lot of selections already from some of the top analysts. Talk to us a little bit about what people can expect from the smaller group of miners. We said, hey, 2024 Bitcoin price is struggling. We have a halving. We have difficulty. It's hard for these companies to raise money. Now, all of a sudden, they're very profitable. A lot of the smaller companies have a hodl. Their market cap enterprise value does not reflect this. There's definitely some value in the smaller miners now.
Yeah, you raise a good point there. So, the likes of Soluna, who've got that low power number of, I'm just going to say small product, but they're actually getting bigger, the projects. As each project gets awarded, the next project seems to be so much more bigger. So growing organically with a partner, avoiding having to raise significant capital to cover the cost of these projects because they're in a profit share. Gryphon Mining also, look at what they've been doing lately in terms of seeking low cost power and looking at alternative sites for their machines as well, looking for a better model that fits them as well. And in valuation terms, we have been sort of like in 2024, we did talk about the fact that there is this gap between those that can and those that are going to have challenges. And there's still going to be challenges for a lot of small miners. But you mentioned DMG, you mentioned Hive Digital. Both of those have got significant hodls in terms of the size of the company. So when you look at Hive, it's well over 2,000, I think 2,700 Bitcoin. At today's prices, that's more than half the valuation of the company just in the hodl. So you buy that company and you've got, $270 million effectively in the treasury. And the company's probably valued at what, 400 million? It's just unbelievable. DMG is in a very similar position. So when you start looking at valuation, and we use this metric valuation by exahash, DMG and Hive are, in terms of, they're the lowest cost valuation of all the miners. So that's number one and number two. So you might think, oh, it's not one of the big miners like Marathon or CIFR or CleanSpark or Riot. No. When you look at the valuation and look at the cost valuation, the market's giving these miners not a high cost valuation at all. Hive have been in the list many times. DMG are normally in that position there. I mean, yes, they are a smaller miner. The reason, obviously it's about growth. They want people who are interested in miners that are growing. So retail investors, maybe institutional investors will flow more to those miners that have done really well this year. Let me look at what IREN's done this year. CleanSpark, Riot, Marathon, all them companies have grown hash rate. All of them four have grown by over 20 exahash. Now, DMG did grow its hash rate, but it grew its hash rate from, I think, just under 1 exahash to about 1.7 exahash. So it's a 70% increase. But, you're looking at IREN. IREN grew from 5.6 to 31 in the same year. And so, IREN came onto my analysis 3 years ago, just over 3 years ago, October 2021. So we're talking 3 years and 2 months. And they came over and they had half an exahash at that point in time and asked, could they be part of the group? And I said, of course you can. Yeah, be part of the group. Just make sure you got the right information. And they've been there ever since. And I've seen them grow organically in that period of time there. 31 exahash achieved on time, in fact, ahead of time. And they're going to go to 50 in the first half of next year. No one's going to doubt them doing that because they've just done it in the previous 6 months, effectively grew 21 exahash in the last 6 months. So it's just amazing. But the smaller ones, DMG are looking to get to 2 exahash. And one thing about DMG and Hive, they keep their costs really low. They're not paying out pop star wages or anything like that. They're keeping the G&A cost, which is really important. They don't give themselves massive amounts of stock compensation like their peer miners. So they're making it better for shareholders. But we need the market to also respect that as well. And at the moment, on previous updates, it's not been as good. But we think, now that with the Bitcoin price where it is now, and every subsequent now quarterly report should be significantly better for all these miners because they've got costs under control. Both of those companies have been replacing miners. So Hive Digital have replaced a lot of their fleet this year. They've got an efficient fleet. DMG have certainly done that because they've added a load of S21s in recent months to their fleets, and their efficiency is really low as well. So that means it's cheaper to mine Bitcoin when you've got a more efficient fleet. So we'll see better information in future quarterly earnings. And good news is we've got Sheldon Bennett on the podcast next week. So we'll certainly be asking him a few questions about where he sees the future of DMG in the mining space, where the Bitcoin price is going to go, and a lot more. So if you have any questions, put them into the links below, and we'll try to ask a few of those questions on the podcast next week.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Anthony. We've actually seen a tremendous amount of interest in the power mining analysis platform to kick off the year. So not only do we have Sheldon and Steve from DMG on Tuesday, but we've also got Sam Tabar on Wednesday from Bit Digital. They've come out with some huge press releases over the holiday break. In addition to that, though, Anthony, and just as exciting, we've actually got some new companies coming onto the channel as well. So Cormint, one of the largest private miners. We've got BitZero, and reaching out to a number of other people or companies involved in the space to really expand the analysis that you guys are getting on the channel. So again, lots of excitement in 2025 here. Speaking of excitement and news, we just talked about Hive in relation to potential outlook and strategy in 2025. They've now come out with a big press release today, achieving 6 exahash.
Yeah, good update from Hive today. So this is announced before they release their numbers for December, which will probably come out maybe early next week. But yeah, achieving 6 exahash today. That's a 47% year-on-year increase. They were at 4.08 exahash December 31st last year. So that's a nice increase from this year. They've also been focusing on their HPC, and they've grown that as well considerably in terms of their revenues now, and that's looking to grow significantly in 2025. Now, the growth to 6 exahash is basically attributable to the upgrade of the Bitcoin mining fleet with more advanced Avalon machines that they've purchased from Canaan. And if you've got these latest machines in there, they basically enhancing the efficiency and the capacity of the fleet there. Separately to this as well, which is really positive news, because we talked about efficiency being one of the great levers. The second lever you want to make sure is get your electricity price. They've secured competitive energy price in Sweden below 2 cents a kilowatt hour. That is putting them sort of like towards the top of the table in terms of energy pricing. I have seen one other miner release, I think it was 1.6 cents a kilowatt hour, and that was Cormint, who we're going to have on the channel shortly. So Jamie McCaverty, who's the CEO of Cormint, he can explain how he's managing to achieve a rate that is nearly twice as good as the best rate some of the miners are achieving in the same state of Texas. So looking forward to that podcast. The company is obviously aiming to achieve 15 exahash by the end of 2025, supported by its strategic expansion into Paraguay, which is emphasizing the company's commitment to efficiency and innovation in Bitcoin mining and positioning the company for transformative growth. So really positive update today from Hive. Share price in early trading reflected that as well. It was one of the top performing shares early today. So market quite likes them getting to 6 exahash. They are in the HPC space as well. In fact, probably one of the earliest miners to go into HPC space, because I had a lot of GPU miners that they were using for Ethereum mining that were dual purpose. They were very clever when they bought some of their GPUs for Ethereum mining. They need to make sure that they had a purpose once the Ethereum mining, because there was always that conversation for about 3 years that the Ethereum mining was going to stop at some point in terms of revenues. And so Hive were predicting that there would be a second requirement from those GPUs. And now we see some of those GPUs have been used in their on-demand service, achieving revenues already.
Yeah, not to mention they've announced that re-domicile down to San Antonio, Texas. So there is definitely some value in Hive that's going to be unlocked in 2025, at least as we see it on the channel, Anthony. Another company that's been beat up over Q4 here, share price trading honestly lower than I would expect to see it, is Bitfarms. So 2024, there was a lot of big stories at Bitfarms. Ben Gagnon took over as CEO. There was obviously the Riot potential acquisition discussion there. A difficult Q4, as you said in our last podcast. We feel maybe an element of bad luck there, as Ben and team were hit with a number of disappointments in the quarter. However, that does present opportunity to the investment community. This is another one that we see tremendous value in moving forward.
Yeah, Bitfarms have generally been at the top of the table in terms of performance this last couple of years. They're literally neck and neck this year with Hive Digital. It's going to be interesting to see who comes out top. I mean, Hive haven't released their numbers now, and Bitfarms have released it. They release their numbers on the first working day, so they're letting everybody know straight away what they've done. Some of these other miners are waiting 5 or 6 days before they release their numbers, and so Hive will release next week. But in terms of the year, yes, it was a disappointment from the fact they fell short reaching their end of year target, which was 21 exahash. And we had Ben on the podcast a number of times this year, and they didn't formally announce they weren't going to achieve it till later in the year. And so when they announced that there, the market didn't like it. They're at 12.8 at the moment. They had some really bad luck with regards to batches of mining machines, and they've reached out to Bitmain to get those orders replaced. And that will happen. But, when orders through Bitmain are going out quicker than they're coming in, it's a challenge to then start, looking at maybe 3-4 exahash of replacement machines to come in and sort of get that hash rate to where it needs to be. Now, they have given a target of getting that 21 exahash by sort of midway through 2025, so we'll keep a focus on that there. I'm hoping, January and February start to see some big increase, because I think they were looking to put more machines into some of their facilities in that period there. So hopefully next month we'll see an increase in that there. From the operational hash rate, they're actually able to utilize most of that hash rate. The average operational hash rate for the month was 11.1, which was an increase on the previous month, where I think it was 10.3. Power, in terms of power accessibility for the company, increased to 324 megawatts. On a positive note, they did achieve a great efficiency rate for 2024. Remember at the start of the year, they had one of the lowest efficiencies in terms of port efficiency. I think it was 35. Now it's at 21, and we've talked about what efficiency means. It means you can mine Bitcoin with using less energy, so therefore you're mining Bitcoin at a cheaper rate. They've got one of the most efficient fleets of all the big miners out there. There's only 2 or 3 miners who've got a more efficient fleet, and not significantly more than 21. So they've got an efficient fleet there. Another thing that happened during the year is they purchased the first US site at Sharon, and that's got access to about 120 megawatts of power. And notwithstanding, you mentioned about the failed attempt from Riot, and that's now in a settlement agreement until 2026. But they did negotiate the purchase of Stronghold Mining, and that's due to be finalised in the early part of 2025. So that'll bring on more hash rate to the company when that happens. But that hash rate wasn't really part of the 21, so that's a bonus hash rate that should that should help them there. So we're hoping really for 2025 to bring some some bigger updates out there. In terms of what they sold in December, they sold 147, so they've added to their hodl, which now stands at 934 Bitcoin and has a value of $87 million as at the end of December. And I think you can cover the synthetic hodl. I think they've released that now.
Yeah, I grabbed a screenshot actually of that paragraph, Anthony. This was one very interesting to me, essentially using options to get Bitcoin exposure or leverage throughout the year. Coming out saying they were able to profit around $18 million from that trading strategy. So that was great to see, as well as we're starting to see these companies really get innovative with how they structure these capped call transactions. They're purchasing Bitcoin. They're using synthetic hodls or positions. So great to get some details there. And as you were chatting, Anthony, actually Bitfarms reached out and have scheduled an interview for the first week of February. So that'll be great to get Ben on and start to talk about some of those strategies moving throughout the year. The one point I did want to make, though, in relation to Hive and Bitfarms, it's going to be interesting to see how quickly these miners can build this hash rate. We've expected 2025, especially Q1, to really be this breakout quarter. We've seen a lot of the big miners using 2024 as the construction year, the preparation year. So for me, the timing here is going to be critical. Whether you get to 21 exahash in Q1, Q2, Q3, or Q4 could look very, very different throughout the year. So will be interesting to get Ben's thoughts there. So overall, Anthony, a tremendous amount of activity, excitement in the space. We're already starting to see some production reports for the month of December. We can hardly wait for the earnings to start coming out for Q4, but overall optimism in the space. And again, kicking off with green trading on the first day of the year, at least for the majority of miners. So with that being said, I'll flip it back to you for any final thoughts, but a great podcast and a great way to start the year.
Yeah, great way to start the year. Green day today. And I expect now, as we're only 18 days away from the pro-Bitcoin administration taking office, that Bitcoin will do well over these next couple of weeks. in anticipation of that there, because everything's been really positive with President Trump and with his team, and his appointments, more importantly, that he's already made, very, very pro-Bitcoin appointments. And all the messaging has been fully focused on that there. I mean, you already highlighted, if the US go out and buy 500,000 Bitcoin, it's just game changing. Got to remember, there'll be other states out there like China, like Russia, that are doing the same as well. Russia have been using Bitcoin to pay bills. So bear in mind, there's an embargo on Russia where they can't pay in rubles, and they weren't able to exchange into dollars. And so they're looking for alternative ways, and Bitcoin's been a great way for them to do that. So they've not been holding back on buying Bitcoin. China, we know, again, will be certainly behind the scenes doing a lot of work on that particular aspect as well. And if those countries are doing it, you can bet your bottom that there's many other states and nations out there doing exactly the same. So really positive. 18 days to go. Look forward to the Bitcoin price over the next couple of weeks. Look forward to the next podcast tomorrow.
Yeah, there you have it. It's funny you say nation states because I'm thinking states as well. As Dennis Porter said, there's now nearly 10 states within the United States wanting to put Bitcoin on balance sheets. So overall, a tremendous amount of buying. We think the bottom is in. We think miners are going to perform in Q1 and outperform Bitcoin or MicroStrategy. Those are our predictions. Time will tell if we're correct or not. Thanks for watching. We'll see you here tomorrow.